Today on Art Scene we'll feature behind the scenes of the Denver Center for the Performing Arts Costume Shop, Danielle Seawalker, a Mayor's Arts Awards winner. From the DCPA, an artist spotlight with Devotchka's Tom Hagerman, and a poem and retrospective of my time as Colorado Poet Laureate. Hey, welcome to another brand new edition of Art Scene. I'm Bobby Lefebvre. We're here behind the scenes at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. More on that later. Also later, you'll hear one of my poems and some insights on my time as Colorado's Poet Laureate. But first, a Mayor's Arts Awards winner, Danielle Seawalker.
I see Danielle's role in the Denver arts community as taking things to another level, having that ability to see the world with different eyes. She's making the space for us to be able to apply our indigenous knowledge for the sake of humanity. And how best can we do that? Through the art. We can speak through her art.
When I moved to Denver, there was a few initiatives I really wanted to just put my focus and energy in. One was the Native community and how I can help and be an asset or a leader and bring value to that community. And the other was the arts community. And as I got further into each of those and really started networking and meeting people and having these opportunities, I realized there was a huge gap. There wasn't a lot of Native people in the arts community and not a lot of the art community providing opportunities for our Native people. I sort of identified this gap and really wanted to bridge it.
Her art is expressing on a positive side Native American values and beliefs through not only her imagery, but even the experience of who she is and what's made her who she is, and transforming that into art. And a lot of that's around advocacy.
She's what I say, one of our more inspiring spirits on a human journey, here in Denver, and what she does for this community is just phenomenal.
I consider myself sort of a multidisciplinary artist. I paint, I have a studio downtown where I do a lot of fine artwork where I really get creative and allow myself to be free. It's kind of like my visual diary. And then I also do a lot of public art, so I do murals. Public art to me has just been such an impactful way to get messaging out. I also love to kind of revive these old cultural arts. Like right now I am helping to facilitate a quill work class. So that's something that I'm really passionate about, is grasping onto these cultural ways that are dying and trying to revive them through teaching and knowledge passing to younger generations. So I really loved old ancient art ways, but then contemporary stuff, and I like to fuse them together.
What Danielle does is provide an example, a role model in that sense, particularly for young women. They can look at, say, hey, here's somebody that's successful. It wasn't given to her. Danielle's earned it. So that instills into young people, they have to earn, what they aspire to. Giving them an opportunity to participate, to get involved, let them know that their input, their art is important and it's telling a story.
In Lakota we say, "Takun shkan shkan wakan," and it means something holy is moving. And it's me, it's you, it's us, that collective as a movement. Then Danielle's role in that is literally that something holy is moving, because you tend to want to just move with her because she creates so many different avenues of grand things to come. So these things that she's creating and helping the community to create really elevates us together as a people.
I'm doing what I can do in my ways of activism, art, being involved in legislation, being involved in just any touch point that I'm involved in. I try to be a voice to speak up, because if I don't, nobody will do it for us or for me. The best way I know how to do that is through art. One thing that I'm really proud of is that I recently formed a 501c3 to help uplift Native artists and to create those opportunities. And so I really think that the future for me is to sort of focus a lot of energy into that. I've been blessed and so many doors have opened for me. And the way I've been taught growing up is that you take what you need, but you give the rest away. And I've been so blessed with getting a lot of things and receiving that I want to pay that forward.
And so now we are here behind the scenes in the costume shop at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts with Amerina Knapp. Thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure.
So you've worked here for many, many years. Tell us what goes on here.
Well, technically, right now we're in the costume shop, and the costume shop builds the costumes. And say if we're talking about wardrobe takes care of the costumes and the actors backstage. Okay. So we'll build them and then we send them over to them and let wardrobe do the backstage process.
Love it. And what is your official role?
I'm a first hand.
First hand. Tell me what that means.
So I'll do kind of the in-between stuff for stitcher, between the stitchers and the drapers. The drapers make the patterns. So I will take the patterns and either cut the patterns, put them onto fabric, and then hand them to the stitchers. Or I will set up different alterations. If it's a more detailed or harder alteration, I'll set it up and send it over to another stitcher, or I'll do it.
Is this also a holding place for all of these costumes? Like, how many costumes are here?
All of this space on this first floor, pretty much, it feels like there's costumes tucked everywhere. We've got a big room and they're all the way to the ceiling. We've got another room back there, all the way to the ceiling. And then all the way in the back, there's multiple rooms that are hats and shoes.
Tell me a little bit about the process from beginning to end, from when the ideas of a costume are being thought up to when you see it on stage.
Well, first it starts with the designer dealing with the director. They figure out the vision and how they want to achieve it. Then it's the designer and the shop manager figuring out what we can achieve in the amount of time that we have. Then it goes down to the drapers and they'll figure out the patterns and all of that, and comes to me or to stitchers and it'll get cut out. Take the pattern and transfer it to the fabric, and then that gets cut out and sent to a stitcher, and the stitcher will build it, will put it together. And then it'll go back to a draper to be fit on the actor to make sure that the pattern still works. Then we go back, finish it all up, send it to wardrobe.
What is your favorite part of your job?
It's never the same. Every day is different. Either it's doing alterations, or it's building something, or it's cleaning up, because there's, you make a mess when you start, but still it's always different.
Yeah. What's the most stressful part of the work?
Getting ready for fittings.
Yeah.
It's hoping that it all still matches. Because it should. In theory, all the lines are the same. But we're all human, so who knows?
How many interactions do you have with the performers on a regular basis? Like, is there multiple fittings that you all do? How does that work?
I think it depends on the complexity and also how well the first fitting goes. If the first fitting goes well and you only have a few alterations, then they might only come back for the final fitting once it's kind of finished and ready to go on, closer to ready to going on stage. But if there's just a lot that has to change, say it was a dress that had to get completely taken apart to fit someone smaller, then we take it apart and then we fit it again. And then, you go in, make sure all those lines still fit. You go back, put it together, do the alterations, put it back on. So I'd say 2 or 3, depending on the complexity.
Yeah. So you've got a whole lot of experience here, and I assume that you have made tons of costumes throughout your time here. Do you have any favorites?
We just did Little Night Music, and I worked on Desiree's ball gown. So all of those pieces had to be basically taken apart. You took the fabric apart, turned everything to appliques, and then put that on top of the dress to build the dress.
The costuming is such an important part of the production. What would you like people to know about your work?
How much is actually built here? Like, so many theaters can pull and kind of work with what's shopped, but at the Denver Center we really try to build as much as we can. And same with the scene shop and the prop shop. We try to get as accurate as we can for the shows that we're doing.
Well, this has been really, really cool. Thank you so much for having us. Is there anything else you would like people to know?
For people that want to go into theater, do it if you love it, because everyone that's here loves it. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. So.
It's great advice. Thank you, Amerina, so much for having us.
Thank you.
And check this out. You can get a behind-the-scenes tour at DCPA. Learn more at denvercenter.org/behind-the-scenes-tour. Speaking of the DCPA, here's an artist spotlight with Devotchka's Tom Hagerman.
Nick Urata started the band in Chicago and eventually made it back to Boulder, where he used to live, and played in many bands before then. And Tom played cello and guitar in the band, and they knew that I played violin, and they just invited me along. And that was 20 plus years ago. I basically was involved with taking the original score and arranging it for an ensemble of augmented Devachka. Having somebody hanging over your head a little bit, like telling you that this needed to be different, or that part of it I'm not quite used to. We had a great music director, Greg Coffin. He was awesome, and he definitely held our hand through the process and everything, but there was a little bit of a, like, Daddy's not going to be happy with me, you know, if we don't do it like this. So when, I think it was Greg Coffin maybe, or, yeah, I can't remember who suggested that we become cast members, but it was just this one scene where they marched us up to the top of the barber chair, sat us down, and Sweeney Todd took a knife and slashed us, and they gave us these cool blood packs, and I felt like I was in a movie or something. You just squished your blood pack and it came shooting out, and it was awesome. And I got to pretend to die, which I haven't done since I was a kid. Pretend to die. I like actually being in the background. I've never felt amazingly comfortable on stage and having people look at me exactly. So I actually kind of like being in the background and being in that role where you're more responsible for the creation of the entire thing. I enjoy performing too, don't get me wrong. I do get a kick out of it. Chris Coleman would send articles. There's one in particular article from the New York Times that was interesting about sort of the genetic makeup of the people of the Iberian Peninsula, essentially, and how these different cultures had probably arrived on this peninsula. And it got him thinking that this is sort of the world that Illyria should be, this genetically sort of diverse stew of different cultures and different people, and how this would influence and inform the costumes and the music and the casting and the accents and all these things. With Twelfth Night, the idea that we're somewhere in the Mediterranean and there's like this Italian / Greek / Silk Road caravan coming in from Asia perhaps, and some North African influence with maybe some percussion, and it just allowed it to kind of create itself in a lot of ways. Mandolins and bouzoukis. Bouzoukis are Greek instruments traditionally, and then there's an Irish version as well, which is another path out to that part of the world. But so I think I started with that, and then the percussion I think was next. And from there, it kind of spawned into melodies and harmonies and that sort of thing. But it definitely started with instrumentation on that project.
Much more on the other side. It has been a real honor serving as Colorado's Poet Laureate for the last 4 years and reading a poem at the recent inauguration. The most pure form of human expression is creating something from nothing, right? These ideas that we have that manifest into a painting or they manifest into a poem. It's really a magical process, and not to over-romanticize it, but it really is this connection to whatever you call it, the spirit world, the cosmos, God, whatever we call those things. It's a dialogue with you and that thing. And from that dialogue comes this beautiful representation of those ideas that we call art. I've been writing creatively since I was a teenager. I knew I had a talent for writing probably in my late teens to early 20s. and or at least I knew I enjoyed it. I didn't know if I was any good, and I probably wasn't any good at that time. The title is such an interesting part of your identity. When you call yourself a poet, it's almost like a responsibility. It's a calling. The Colorado Poet Laureate program is over 100 years old, and I served a 4-year term. So I served from 2019 just up until a couple months ago, but largely you're serving as an ambassador for the art of poetry. In my case, being Colorado's Poet Laureate, I was responsible for the entire state. So I did my best during my term and tenure to connect with people across the state through poetry, whether that was through readings or facilitating conversations.
Marvel as we paint with colors that do not yet exist.
I really wanted to change the perception of what a poet laureate is and what it can look like, what it can sound like, the work that they can do. And I wanted to broaden it beyond what we know to be poetry, because I think for far too long we've focused on poetry as this static thing that lives in a book or on a shelf, or this sort of ivory tower approach to what poetry is. And I wanted to really bring the communal aspect back to Colorado's understanding of what poetry is. It's the tool that we use to have more human conversations and really connect with one another about, what's happening in our lives, in our communities, socially. I think by nature of just the way that I showed up as Poet Laureate, I think it exposed the job to people that didn't even know it existed. And in that, their first entry point to what a Poet Laureate is something I'm proud of.
Tomorrow being built today.
I think that's the perfect way to welcome us back in the midst of a pandemic.
It was so wild because, I had all these plans to travel. I really wanted to get to the parts of the state that previous Poets Laureate weren't able to make. And then, pandemic hits. And it almost opened up a completely new world because access became so easy through online means. So I was able to actually do more, I think, and cover a wider area virtually than I may have, having to drive 3 or 4 hours. It was strange, as we were all acclimating to what it meant to be in this new virtual world, we were figuring out what we could do. And, I had libraries reaching out to me, and I had, nonprofit organizations and arts organizations saying, hey, we need poetry right now, what can we do? There were local and national events that I participated in where you would get 10 poets in a room that would be really, really difficult to do in a space, or maybe really, really expensive. And you're able to bring these people together and share time in this virtual space, and it became, I think, really, really, really cool. I think I did more events in the first year than I was probably prepared for, but in that you connect with people, and the message ripples out, and people then become interested in not only you as a person, but in the art of poetry, which is ultimately what I was tasked with doing. So I think that bringing poetry to people in new ways, and sharing that experience with them in their own communities, in their living rooms, in their places of worship, in their institutions, in their universities, in their all these places that I visited. It was an incredible experience, and I think that one-on-one relationship with people, the getting past the stigma of what poetry is, and giving it, something more human, is something that I was really proud of. When archaeologists and historians look back and try to understand a people, they go to the art, they go to what we leave behind, they go to the poetry, and that is the heart of a people. The art is the manifestation of the complexity of our existence, and we use art to tell that story. I am appreciative of the opportunity to be able to share my love of poetry and for serving as Colorado's Poet Laureate for the last 4 years. I passed the baton to Andrea Gibson and I know they will do an incredible job. Now, let's see what's happening in Denver this week. Thank you so much for watching. Check us out on YouTube and we hope to see you again as we discover more of Denver's art scene. Tuskegee maybe. You know, I have a friend whose grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman, Tuskegee Lefebvre, you know. It's kind of like orange, you know, nothing really rhymes very well with it. I'll think about that though. Yeah.